As viewers, the following program is classified G and is suitable for general viewing.
Well, to us, that's probably the most typical sound of a Mozart symphony. It's the Jupiter, played by a modern symphony orchestra. The sound is large, well-blended and impressive, where all the individuality of the performers has been submerged in the overall creamy texture which we take for granted. The sound of the late 20th century symphony orchestra. The only trouble is that Mozart himself would neither have recognized the sound nor understood it. Well, in this program, we're going to look at and hear Mozart's music in a completely new way, in the way that Mozart expected. We're going to meet Mozart's teachers. We shall hear about comments on Mozart's music made by travellers who heard this music when it was very fresh to audiences. And we shall consider composers who influenced Mozart in his early years. Well, we've come here to the Marble Hall of Kedleston Hall near Derby, because it was for just such 18th century houses that Mozart composed, and it was in such fine rooms as this Robert Adam masterpiece that Mozart's music was first performed and enjoyed. And it's the music of a young man, don't forget, who, at the age of 19, which is actually not much more than half the age of many of us here, could already create this. Well, over the next 5 years, we shall be recording afresh all Mozart symphonies. It'll be a voyage of rediscovery. Rediscovering the real Mozart is a little like restoring a painting. Accumulated dust and layers of varnish are removed, and a new painting is revealed. New, that is, to us. In music, too, when the intentions of the composer can be discovered, and when these intentions are realized on the instruments of the period, then the music is revitalized in just the same way as that painting. We're more or less used to hearing revitalized masterpieces of the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, even of such great Baroque composers as Bach. Lute music is now normally played on the lute rather than on the guitar. The anachronism of playing Bach on the piano is dying out. It's much more common to find him played on the instruments that he actually knew: the organ, the clavichord, and, of course, the harpsichord. Now, if such a process is valid for Bach and his predecessors, then why not later composers? Would we restore a Rembrandt but not restore a Van Gogh? And so, just as Bach can be revitalized by studying his original scores and reading about his performances from eyewitnesses, so we can extend the process to Mozart, to Beethoven, to Brahms, even to Debussy. By studying their manuscripts and the instruments, by returning to the colours, the style and the clarity of their individual periods, we can rediscover their works with the eyes and ears of a contemporary listener. Why then have I and the Academy of Ancient Music chosen out of all the composers of the 18th century to record the complete symphonies of Mozart? There are, after all, many recordings of Mozart symphonies, including several so-called complete sets. And the later works are represented by performances by almost all the great conductors of this century. So, couldn't we have killed two birds with one stone by recording neglected masterpieces by some of Mozart's contemporaries? People like Vanhal or Stamitz or John Christian Bach. Well, the truth is that Mozart towers over all his contemporaries, apart from Haydn, and by recording all his symphonies in roughly the order in which he composed them, we're hoping to learn for ourselves the nuances of the styles which Mozart developed. By the time we reach the works written at the end of his life, we'll be immersed in the music of Mozart in a way unique since his death. Where then do we start removing the dust from his music? Here's the conventional layout of an orchestra as you might expect to find it today. First and second violins sitting in a block on the left of the conductor, violas in front of him, cellos on his right with the double basses behind them. There might be as many as 50 string players in some modern performances of a Mozart symphony. Mozart nowadays would probably be performed with 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets and drums, all controlled by one man, the conductor. Well, how would the orchestra for which the young Mozart composed have differed? Well, one major difference of great importance: there was no conductor. The orchestra was controlled by 2 people. Firstly, the principal violinist, the concertmaster we might call him today, who controlled the upper voices, the violins, flutes, oboes and so on. The second director I'll come to in a moment. Then these ranks of string players would have only occurred in amateur orchestras. The professional orchestras would have been much smaller. The disposition was quite different. First violins sit opposite the second violins, flanking the concertmaster, with the violas, cellos and double basses in front of him. The wind players would have been placed wherever convenient. Flutes and oboes, still 2 of each, as today, over there. 3 bassoons here, 4 horns back here, 2 trumpets and kettle drums together here. And the second director, who looked after the lower voices, is here, playing the most serious omission from the modern orchestra, the harpsichord. Here then is how Mozart would have expected to find the orchestra laid out in about 1775. And here is what it would have sounded like. Mozart was an infant prodigy, and his father was an eminent violin teacher. The two appeared in London in 1764, when the young Mozart was only 8. He was announced as the greatest prodigy that Europe, or even human nature, has to boast of. He was exhibited rather as if he were part of a circus. But in London, Mozart did meet the leading composer of the day, Johann Christian Bach. He formed a friendship with him, and for the rest of his life, he claimed that his music owed fundamentally more to this man than to many others. And when you hear the music of Johann Christian, then you can easily understand why we so illogically refer to his style nowadays as Mozartian. That was part of the slow movement of J.C. Bach's overture to an Italian opera. You probably recognize the first theme as one that Mozart himself used, though, in a piano concerto later on in his life. Well, that melody has passed without any question as being Mozart's own, although it was probably used by him as a sort of memorial in the year that Johann Christian died. Well, besides visiting England, where everyone knew there was good money to be made for music in those days, the 18th century traveller always made a point of going through the city of Mannheim in southern Germany, especially if he was interested in orchestras and orchestral playing. Charles Burney, the English musical historian, went there in 1777. And he reported,
I found the Mannheim Orchestra to be indeed all that its fame had made me expect. Power will naturally arise from a great number of hands, but the judicious use of this power, on all occasions, must be the consequence of good discipline. Indeed, there are more solo players and composers in this orchestra than perhaps in any other in Europe. It is an army of generals, equally fit to plan a battle as to fight it. It was here that Stamitz first surpassed the bounds of common opera overtures, which had hitherto only served in the theatre as a kind of court crier, with an "oh yea" in order to awaken attention and bespeak silence at the entrance of the singers. Since the discovery which the genius of Stamitz first made, every effect has been tried which such an aggregate of sound can produce. It was here that the crescendo and diminuendo had birth, and the piano, which before was chiefly used as an echo and with which it was generally synonymous, as well as the forte, were found to be musical colours which had their shades as much as red or blue in painting.